Throughout Magic's history, we have seen several of its greatest players win on its biggest stage, with some players having earned unforgettable nicknames. There's Patrick Chapin, also known as the Innovator, for being one of Magic's greatest deck builders. Kai Bude with the nickname the German Juggernaut for having an unstoppable run of 7 Pro Tour championships. Bob Maher as the Great One for becoming one of Magic's most celebrated players. And then there's Brian Kibler, who earned his nickname the Dragonmaster for playing an unlikely card back in 2000 at Pro Tour Chicago. In this episode, we will be taking a look at the story of the Dragonmaster and his claim to fame.
I think that there's an unfair stereotype of Magic players as being somewhat socially awkward sometimes, and Brian does the best job of dispelling that. He's always super gracious with his fans. He's always, charming. He's fun to watch on camera. He's always polite to his opponents. He's everything you want someone to be playing Magic at the height of the game.
He's really, really good at the game. He understands it in a way that very few people do. He's always streaming, he's always tweeting, he's always Facebooking, he's always writing, casting, videoing, and then he's playing and beating everyone on Earth. The Dragon Master, the Card Master, the Games Master, that's Brian Kibler.
Growing up, I always played a lot of games, and I always had a thing for strategy games in particular. I played like Dungeons and Dragons growing up, and at a gaming convention, I saw a bunch of people playing this card game. This was in, say, '94. I was 13. I saw them playing this card game. It looked really cool. I picked up a few packs and brought them home and started playing with my brother, and really never stopped.
With 5 Pro Tour top 8s and 2 Pro Tour wins, Brian Kibler is one of Magic's most accomplished players. But when did he start playing on the Pro Tour?
A lot of people ask me, how did you go pro? When did you go pro? And it's a lot different for me than it is for a lot of people now. I mean, I won the first Grand Prix I played in. But I wouldn't really say I considered myself a pro player until I made the top 8 in the Pro Tour in Chicago in 2000. Then I started writing for strategy websites, strategy magazines. They actually were printed magazines back then. It's a long time ago. That's the point when I really started to actually make a pretty reasonable income playing Magic, and didn't really have to keep working my work study at school.
Unlike many accomplished players who tend to play control decks or combo decks with blue, Brian favors the colors red, white, and green while basing his decks around creatures. This strategy was unconventional for a very long time, yet he still found success.
He has his own style, and he doesn't care kind of what the metagame is. He will attack it from his own way of looking at things, which is often a very creature-based approach, that even when people think that isn't the best way to go, he will find a way to do it. So he has very unconventional deck building, and he always plays to his own strengths.
As part of the testing with our team channel Fireball, Kibler he's done a lot of work. We've played his decks at multiple Pro Tours. He builds similar decks, every time, but that's kind of like his role in the team is to build the kind of mid-range deck, like the Zoo deck we played in Philadelphia is one good example. The decks he likes to play are decks people like to play. I mean, he likes Baneslayer Angels and he likes Night of the Reliquaries. He doesn't like Storm Combo. That's not what he's into.
He usually doesn't work on control decks. He works on his decks, the Naya decks, the Gruul decks, the green decks, and he just whenever there's a problem, he'll just tinker with it. He'll go look, he'll find some cards that maybe other people aren't thinking about. He'll change a couple of the numbers, and then suddenly his deck's beating that. He's beating whatever the problem was, I mean, he just has that mind where he can just make that deck, if you tell him what the problems are gonna be and what the field is gonna be, and he can predict that too, but I mean, if he knows that, then he's just gonna solve it, you know what I mean? He can make a good deck, anytime.
I've had most of my success, at least recently, playing generally green creature decks, and I like creature decks mostly because I like to be proactive. I find that control decks don't really sort of suit the way that I want to play the game, which is put pressure on my opponent and make them respond to what I'm doing. Dave Price once said, there are no wrong threats, only wrong answers. And while that's not precisely true, it's actually there are the wrong threats sometimes because you need to have the right threats against the answers people do have. It's about finding what the best threats are. And I also find that there's a lot of players who for some reason, feel like, control decks are like, what good players play, or, I don't really think that that's a fair sort of assessment, because, they're like, oh, I want to play a deck that, like gives me an opportunity to outplay my opponent. It's like, what gives you an opportunity to outplay your opponent? Just playing Magic. Like, Magic's a very hard game, and the intricacies of just attacking and blocking, are very complicated, and you can find ways to give yourself an edge in anything, really.
So Brian Kibler got his nickname of the Dragonmaster at Pro Tour Chicago, where he made the top 8 playing a deck that had sort of a red-green creature deck, kind of deck Brian's become known for over the years. But this is really where the first time he had success with this deck, and he played Rith, the Awakener, sort of this 3-color gold dragon that had just come out in the Invasion set. But not only does he play this giant dragon, not only does he make the top 8, put the dragon into play, he's also got Armadillo Cloak, which is an enchantment that makes it, +2/+2, even bigger, lifelinking, trampling. Not only does he get Rith with Armadillo Cloak, but he's attacking John Finkel for the win with this gigantic monstrosity of a dragon. He's been the Dragonmaster ever since.
For a long time in Magic's history, creatures really weren't nearly as good, and so to take dragons and to win with dragons, you have to put a lot of extra thought into how to make that work. And he flashes a smile when he's killing you with dragons. I think that's how he becomes the Dragonmaster.
You got your aggro strategies, you got your control, you got your combo, and then you've got like giant monsters with, mythic rarity symbols and, jaws dropping, however you want to describe it. Over the years, Brian Kibler with that Armadillo Cloaked Rith has always been for me almost the ideal, like the thing that constructed format should strive. And you know what? Brian Kibler can win a Pro Tour attacking with 5/5 flyers. That's fun.
After having a total of 2 Grand Prix wins, a Pro Tour top 8, and several other Grand Prix top 8 performances, Brian retired from the game at the end of the 2004 season.
After I graduated from college, I was playing Magic pretty much full time for about a year, and then I ended up taking a job at Upper Deck, where I was doing game design. I worked in the Versus System TCG, then in the World of Warcraft TCG. And when I was there, I really didn't have the same inclination, the same time and inclination to play Magic that I did, at least in a competitive level. And for me, it's difficult for me to play sort of semi-competitively. Anytime I do anything, I really want to be very good at it. So I ended up skipping a couple Pro Tours for various reasons, and then falling off the train. I didn't really have the drive to really qualify again, and then really just stopped playing for a while. But again, I kept reading about Magic and following tournaments a bit. And when the Hall of Fame was announced, I really knew that my resume up to that point wasn't good enough to justify inclusion in the Hall of Fame, and I really wanted to be in it.
I mean, it was pretty simple. He didn't get into the Hall of Fame. He's like, what? I don't have a Hall of Fame Magic career? No, you didn't. You left. It was unfinished, and he came back, and he got back to the Pro Tour. He won a Pro Tour. He won another Pro Tour, and, proved that he was a Hall of Fame player. It was very, very simple. The Hall of Fame and not being in there, it didn't reconcile with what Brian Kibler thought of himself as a Magic player. He thought, I am a Hall of Fame Magic player, and I'm going to show you it, even if you don't realize it.
When we instituted the Pro Tour Hall of Fame, he came back specifically because of that. I mean, it was one of the things that brought him back into the game. I want to do that, and I'm going to dedicate my thing to getting that, and he did it.
So, how does it feel?
It's amazing. It was pretty hilarious seeing all the old pictures of me with my ridiculous facial expressions up on the screen and everyone laughing. But it's great. It was great. I was able to have my brother here. I started playing Magic with my brother like 17 years ago. He doesn't play anymore, but he was going through my deck, during the ceremony. He's like, I don't know what any of these do, but this is awesome. So.
Magic's been a huge part of my life. It's introduced me to a lot of my closest friends. It's the reason that I have the job that I have now making games. Just the sort of connections that I got from playing games competitively. So I felt like the Hall of Fame was something that represented a lot of things that are important to me, and trying to make myself worthy of inclusion was a pretty big factor in deciding to play again.
Game second match to Brian Kibler, the Dragonmaster, is your Innistrad Dark Ascension Master.
2 years after being inducted into the Hall of Fame, Brian won his second Pro Tour title at Pro Tour Dark Ascension in Honolulu, Hawaii. This amazing feat is one of Brian's biggest accomplishments, as there had only been one other player to win a Pro Tour after having been elected into the Hall of Fame. As of 2015, only 3 players have won the Pro Tour after being inducted into its Hall of Fame.
The highlight of my Magic career was when I won Pro Tour Austin. It was really sort of this pretty amazing, culmination of so many years having played before and not really had nearly as much success as I ultimately had coming back to Magic and playing in the Pro Tour, and just the sense that I was a Pro Tour champion now. And there's one point that I distinctly remember. It was actually after my first top 8 in Chicago. It was the next Pro Tour. And I remember thinking, there's all these Pro Tours, and someone wins each of them, and it's never me. And if it was finally, after Austin, and it was just really a pretty awesome experience. Actually just getting handed the trophy, the big check, and yeah, it was sweet.
There's the hand, and Brian Kibler is your Pro Tour Austin champion.
If you're a completist, Magic drives you nuts. And I think for anyone who loves games and exploring design space and development space and being constantly presented with new challenges, well, you can't lose with Magic.
To this day, Brian continues to play Magic competitively while being a game designer for Stoneblade Entertainment, creators of the deck building game Ascension and the digital trading card game SoulForge.
There was a point when I sort of realized that I didn't want to do anything else. I considered a bunch of different possible careers. I considered writing, I considered teaching, but I mean, games is really what I've loved my whole life. There's a point after I graduated from college with my degree in philosophy and religion, which there aren't many careers that you go into with that degree. And my dad was like, "So, are you gonna get a real job now?" And I was like, "I don't think you understand. This is my job. This is what I'm gonna do."
I think he understands that Magic is a game that will always be there for him to challenge himself against. It is the Everest of games. And no matter how many times you climb the mountain, it will always be there, ready to take you on and take you to your absolute limit of gaming excellence.